Welcome to the Wake Up and Lead podcast. My guest today is someone that I've certainly learned a lot from, more from afar, but we have him close up in person, kind of, or over a screen today. And I'm confident that myself, as well as you, will learn a lot from him about a lot of different things. So, Dennis Geelen, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Hampton.
Yeah. So, some of the research that I've done, I was looking at your story, and it looks like you had quite a career, maybe a couple decades in corporate, where you've got different leadership roles and everything like that. But then out of nowhere, I don't want to. I want you to tell the story, but I feel like something happened. There was this big shift where maybe you got laid off or something like that that really brought
Yeah.
you into your journey today. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, exactly. It did come out of left field in one sense, but in another sense, if looking back, I would say I was probably kind of coasting at that point. I kind of checked a lot of the check boxes, right? Earlier
Mm,
in my life and my career, got the degree, got the job, got the house, got the family, kind of moved my way up into different leadership roles. And then I probably got to this point where I was kind of like, okay, this is it. I guess
yep.
I've done it. I'm in my late 30s, early 40s at this point, and it was kind of like, okay, I guess I've checked all the check boxes. I just coast from here on in. So, in one sense, the layoff was a complete shock and came out of left field. But in another sense, it was a great wake up call that, hey,
Mm.
you got a lot of life left to live. Life is not about checking check boxes. Put your boots on, roll up your sleeves. Let's try something here and let's bet on yourself. So,
Mm. And I don't want to speak for you, but looking back, you're probably glad that you weren't just like, what if you just coasted from 40 years old to 65? I wonder
I,
what your life would have looked like.
yeah, I can't imagine. I would assume that probably on my own, I would have got the itch and would have eventually done something about it, but maybe not. That when you're lulled into that sense of safety and security, you don't have to. It's a lot different than all of a sudden you're on the outside looking in and you're
Mm.
kind of forced to do something. So in retrospect, it was a happy accident. That was a nice breath of fresh air, I guess.
All right, you said it. That was one of my questions. Happy accident. I love hearing you talk about this. I feel like this is something you're pretty passionate about. What in the world is a happy accident?
Yeah, so I do talk about this quite a bit. I've got the Happy Accidents newsletter, but it's basically, unintentionally, you stumble across something accidentally by maybe it's chance encounter, maybe it's serendipity, maybe it's, predestined, who knows, but you weren't planning for it. And it ends up being something amazing that as long as you have the courage and the openness to run with it and capitalize on it, it could take your life in a completely different direction that you didn't expect, but maybe an amazing one, right? So
Mm.
for me, that was the layoff. And I'm sure we'll dive into what happened, what did I do? But there's so many amazing stories out there of people that just accidentally stumbled across something and the success they found or the things that it brought them, the paths that took them on were just amazing, happy accidents. So
Yeah, and I would guess maybe you've talked a little bit about this. There's probably happy accidents all around us, but some people maybe aren't looking for them. I feel like I've seen you talk about you've got to have
yeah,
an eye out and then be willing to
yes,
kind of get
yeah.
uncomfortable and step into it. Courage.
Yep. Yeah, in my newsletter, I actually after I'd probably written maybe a dozen or so of these stories, I started to see this pattern. Okay, almost every happy accident story falls into this three-part script. First, the person was doing something. They were setting the stage, right? They weren't just sitting there on the couch and all of a sudden luck found them. They were getting out there. They were meeting people. They were trying things. They were testing different ideas. They were open. Um, really setting the stage, but didn't know what was going to happen. They probably had an idea. They probably had some sort of plan, like, hey, I'm going to build this or do this. But then a happy accident lands in their lap. Because of all this work they were putting in, because of all the people they were meeting, all the ideas they were putting out there, something comes their way that they weren't expecting. They stumble across an invention, an idea, a partnership, something. But then step 3 is exactly as you said, they have to have the openness, the guts, the courage, and probably some skills to capitalize on it.
Mm.
And you see, as you said, all the time, things land on people's lap and they don't do anything with it. Well, that was their opportunity, right? Maybe they did step 1. They were putting themselves out there where they were generating all these ideas and something lands in their lap. But no, I'm going in this direction. I'm going to ignore that new, cool, awesome thing that just landed my way. I'm going here, or I'm too scared to capitalize on it, or I didn't see it at all because I was so busy with my head down over here. So all 3 of those things really have to happen in order for it to end up being a successful, happy accident success story.
And I bet the longer you keep on the golden handcuffs, if you will, once you get into your late 30s, 40s, you got the job security, you're making money, it's easy to coast. Probably the harder it is to take that step out in and have the courage and do the thing.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's a message for some of the younger folks like myself listening here, where obviously you may want to get a job and learn something, but I have talked to some older folks who have said, yeah, I kind of wish I would have been looking, or wish I would have been a little bit more courageous
Yeah.
earlier on. Do you see
Yeah.
that as a theme?
100%. And I have nothing against having a good corporate job at all. Most people are going to go that route, and they should. And you're gonna learn a ton. You're gonna get security. You're gonna hopefully invest some money, right? Uh, the problem I ran into was that's all I did,
Mm-hmm.
and I put 100% of my eggs in that basket, and I got complacent. What I wish I had done was much earlier done some sort of side hustle, something on the side where I learned a lot more about branding and marketing and how to, package something and sell it. But I tell people I never had an entrepreneurial bone in my body, I didn't think, for, the first 40 years of my life. Well, then all of a sudden when I was laid off, I had to jump in and learn all this stuff really quickly. So I would encourage anybody in their 20s, okay, you've got your corporate job, great. Now, what can you do on the side as well? Anything. Like, you've got a great podcast going. That's awesome. It doesn't interfere with your corporate job. In fact, it meshes nicely. But who knows how many people you're going to get to talk to, how many amazing ideas you're going to swap, how many different potential new ideas or partnerships are going to come out of the fact that you've got this podcast, right? Maybe it's a newsletter, maybe it's a YouTube channel, maybe it's a side hustle as some sort of freelancer, doing something on the side. But it's going to open up so many more doors and opportunities that otherwise would be completely closed because, okay, got my corporate job, I'm done. Right?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point, and I think a lot of times people may hear, "Oh, okay, start a side hustle." Like, I mean, I don't have time for that, and we make time for what's important for us. But I think a lot of
Yes.
people, especially earlier on, may not have a skill and they don't know exactly what to do. But when you mentioned those 3 parts, something really stuck out to me. The first thing that you said was just you're out there, you're meeting people, you're testing things. A way that I like that I could put that is you are happy with the direction that things are going. And like an example for me is, like you said, it's this podcast. I started this, and this is not to pat myself on the back. It actually was kind of a happy accident if I look back at how it even started. And I don't know exactly what this is leading to, but listener, I really hope that you learn from Dennis, and I know that you will. But selfishly, it's like I'm having this conversation with you, and I know I'm learning from you and building and networking, and who knows what that turns into. And so I think you don't have to start a massive like side Airbnb business.
Yeah.
A good start might just be figuring out a way to like network with more people or have like a few conversations a week, and you never know what that could turn into.
Yeah. And even Airbnb, that's a great actual happy accident story. It's actually coming up in a couple weeks in the newsletter, but they didn't start as a big thing either. It was, hey, we had an air bed, we had an air mattress, we needed to make our rent for this month. can we rent out this room with an air mattress and make a little money on the side? That's exactly how Airbnb started. And then
Wow.
ideas grew from there and other things happened. And next thing you know, they became this platform. But originally it was, hey, we had an air bed, air mattress. How can we make some money off this extra room we have in our apartment?
Now that is a happy accident right there.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Do you have a couple others off the top of your head? What are some of your favorite happy accidents that you
Oh
talked
yeah,
about in your
so
newsletter?
many. One of my favorite ones actually is Honda, because today they're this massive player in the auto industry. The Honda Civic and the Honda Accord are probably two of the most well-known and widely bought and sold sedans in the world. But back in the 60s, they were trying to break into the motorcycle industry. The big players at the time were like Harley Davidson and Triumph, and they had these big road bikes that were very popular, and you saw everybody riding around on their Harleys and their Triumphs. So Honda said, okay, we're going to go head to head. We're going to go right up against the big players. We're going to design our own big road bike, and we're going to start with California. We're going to target California. That's where we're going to infiltrate the market. And they came up with this massive marketing plan, spent all kinds of money on billboard ads, radio ads, posters, and they were just targeting California. And they had so many people on the ground working for Honda on this marketing plan that they had to get all around California to all these different meetings, making sure all the marketing was in place. Well, they gave all those employees these little tiny scooters to ride around on to make it easy. So they're bombing around California on these little scooters, making sure all the billboards and the ads and everything's in place. And what happens? The road bikes tank. Hardly anybody buys them. The people that do don't like them. They're not the quality that they were expecting with what they would get with Harley Davidson or Triumph. But something strange happened. All these people were noticing all these little scooters bombing around California going, wow, what are those? Those are cool. Where do I get one? And they start calling up like Sears and Eaton's and these catalogs. And they're like, hey, can we order one of these from you guys? Can we do this? And then Sears and Eaton's are like calling Honda going, hey, everybody wants to buy these little scooters. Like, can we sell them in our catalog? And at first, Honda was like, no, we're trying to sell this big road bike. That's our plan. That's our vision. And eventually they, took notice of the signals and were like, man, we got to pivot here. Like, let's scrap the big road bike. People want these little scooters that we're bombing around on. Let's start pushing those. And complete happy accident, but that's what made them take off. That's what got them into the motorcycle industry, and that's they grew from there. So I love that story because it shows that even though you could be a large organization, the leadership at the top still has to be willing to pivot, take some risks, and listen to the market. And I think we see with a lot of large organizations nowadays, it's like, no, we spent our money and our effort on this big plan. We're sticking to this big plan. And Honda's where they are at today because they didn't do that. They listened, they pivoted, and complete happy accident on how that turned out.
Wow, I had no idea about that. And I like how you've talked about step number 3 is really, you brought up the word courage. You have to have the courage to step out and go do it. And I bet the larger the organization, like you said, the harder it is to have that courage. But also it probably requires a lot of humility too, because Honda could have
Yes.
said, like the people at the top could say, oh, we're Honda. Like we know what's best. And there's probably people that are calling them, but on like the bottom level and the layers below saying, wait, I actually think that we have something here. And I mean, good for them that they stepped into it, but a lot of times they probably miss.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you nailed it. Like, the smaller you are, you're just starting out. Hey, you got nothing to lose. What's the risk? Let's try this. Let's listen to what our customers are talking about. You're just trying to survive, right? But a larger organization, there's pride and there's, hey, we spent all this time and money on this plan. We're not changing. So kudos to Honda for actually having the courage to go, no, this is the right direction. Let's go for it.
This is good. Hey, you're a great storyteller. You know, maybe I need to memorize some of these, and it can be like bedtime stories for my for my kids one day if I want them to be like aspiring entrepreneurs or something.
There you go. Just read them a different edition of the Happy Accidents newsletter every night at bed. There you go.
You should turn it into a children's book. Now this could be a happy accident right here. I'm coming up with something on the fly.
There you go. There you go. See, the children's edition.
Yeah, you're right. Can you fire off one more for us?
Oh, tons. Yeah. So another good one would be Sarah Blakely with Spanx.
Okay.
So this one's an individual, right? Honda was a corporation. Here's Sarah Blakely. So she actually started off as a door-to-door salesman selling fax machines. That's where she cut her teeth. That's where she learned all about marketing and sales and how to be, really courageous and get used to hearing no, and really built up a lot of those skills that you need as an entrepreneur. So what happened with her was the company that she was working for, selling fax machines, was having their holiday Christmas party. So she's getting all dressed up, putting on her favorite white pants, and she's like, the undergarments that I have to wear under these don't look right. You can see the lines, whenever it just doesn't feel right. So she's scrambling and decides, I'm going to grab a pair of pantyhose and cut the feet off, because the shoes I'm wearing are, you're supposed to be able to see my feet, but the rest of the pantyhose is going to work perfectly for underneath this, and loves it. It works out amazing. She starts telling her friends about it. She starts making some for her friends, and then gets the idea like, wow, there's actually a product here. And with everything she learned about sales and marketing and persisting and how to be an entrepreneur, she turned that new product into what we know today as Spanx. Complete happy accident. She just kind of made these out of necessity for this holiday party, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar company that she's built out of it.
Goodness gracious. I mean, that's super cool. I had no idea about that story either. I like how you talked about she learned the sales and the marketing and everything before. That's one of the things that I've learned from having people on here, and something I'm trying to do myself younger in my career is, I don't know exactly from like a career standpoint or this podcast exactly like what it's going to lead to, but I like the feeling of the direction that it's going. And with her, maybe she probably didn't want to be in door-to-door sales for forever, but maybe she knew that the skills that she was learning and the certain habits and work ethic would probably lead to something. And I think that that's a lot of times people who are younger, they don't really think about the learning component. They think more about like the earning one. It's like, how much money can I make? And that's fine, but I would say focus on what you're learning as well, because that'll probably lead you to your next thing, and you may even stumble into like a happy accident like you're talking about.
100%. That was her setting the stage unknowingly. She was, because of her job as a door-to-door fax salesperson, she was setting the stage for all the ingredients, all the skills, all the stuff she was going to need later on to build this multi-billion-dollar business. That set the stage for her unknowingly. And then this happy accident happens and she capitalizes on it. But you can see that the same formula was followed there.
Wow. Okay, so speaking of setting the stage, you set the stage for yourself for maybe a couple decades or so, and then obviously you got laid off. Let's hear the rest of the story. What ends up happening for you?
Yeah, so originally my first instinct actually was, okay, I'll just jump back in and find another corporate job. With my layoff, I got a pretty good severance package. Like I said, before that, I had no entrepreneurial bone in my body, or didn't think I did. I was quite risk averse. So it was, I got to jump back in, and, within a couple of weeks, I'm sure I can find another job. But it was actually my wife that convinced me, hey, you've been given a gift here. All of a sudden you have a bunch of time on your hands. We're fine financially, right? I had my severance package. She had a good job. She's like, you were kind of coasting the last few years. I'd love to see you try and do something. Bet on yourself. And I remember always telling her I was always a little bit envious or jealous whenever we as a company would bring in outside consultants to do like our strategy planning or leadership development. And oh man, every time a consultant came in and ran these workshops, everybody would hang off their every word. And I would be like, hey, I said the same thing in a meeting last week, and nobody listened to me. But the consultant walks in and they say it and they lay it out, and everybody's like, wow, that's amazing, right? She's like, I think you would be a great consultant. And I was like, oh man, I would love that, but that seems risky. And, I don't think I can do it. And then eventually she said, no, I want you to do it. And I want you to give it a full year so that, you're not tempted to quit after 3 months or 6 months, because if you do quit, you'll always look back later in life going, I wonder what would have happened if I actually stuck it out? Could I have built my own consulting business? Um, and if it doesn't work after a full year, you'll know, hey, I gave it a really good shot. I gave it a full year and I put everything into it. Then you can go back and find another corporate job. So that was 5.5 years ago. And here I am. So I built my one-person consulting company, Zero In, put out the book, The Zero In Formula. That really took that to the next level. Another happy accident was people were knocking on my door going, hey, I want to start my own one-person business. Can I pick your brain? So then I started doing solopreneur coaching. I put out the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Both of those books I didn't really plan on. I never saw myself as an author before. Both the books hit bestseller on Amazon, took both of those coaching and consulting companies to whole new levels. I'm on all kinds of podcasts all of a sudden. I'm doing speaking engagements. All of this was not planned. None of this was, at all in my vision for even what I was going to do when I started. I thought I would just be a consultant. And all these opportunities and all these different happy accidents have popped up because I keep setting the stage and then I keep capitalizing on them when they come my way. So it's been quite the journey and a ton of fun. That's for sure.
So what you're saying is your wife is the real MVP.
Yes, exactly. I owe it all to her and her encouragement and words of wisdom. But I mean,
Wow. Yeah.
having said that, you do see that difference. There's lots of people who want to start up their own thing and they don't have the support. Maybe they don't have the support system. They don't have maybe a partner or a spouse like I do that's encouraging them and wanting to see them be successful. Maybe they even have friends or family members that are naysayers or like, what are you doing? Just go back and get a job. I was blessed to have my wife in my corner cheering me on and telling me to do it. So I don't for a second, underestimate the importance of that. And I feel extremely blessed to have that in my corner. So
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I love that she was like, "Hey, let's do this for a year because you may be tempted to quit after 3 months or so, but if you go for a year, you'll likely know." And I think that's a good principle for all of us in life. I just think most people generally quit too early in whatever it is that they're doing, and they don't see it out.
100%. And trust me, I was tempted several times in that first year. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. This isn't working. This is hard. I feel like a fool, and I'd have all these sleepless nights. And even though we were fine financially, it bothered me. And what if I try too hard on this and I can't go back and find another job? Now I've ruined everything, and all these
Yeah.
ideas that go through your mind. But then, you get some clients, you see some success, it gives you some momentum, and then you keep going, and eventually it builds. So.
Mm. Did I see that the Accidental Solopreneur book is a fable? Is that right?
It is, yes.
Okay.
So the first book, the Zero In Formula, it's just a straight business book. Here's my formula when I'm working with consulting clients. Here's what I do. So in Zero In, I work with businesses. I work with leadership teams. And here's the formula I take them through. So I take people through the formula in that book. And I give examples and I give some the odd story here and there from different companies I've worked with. In the Accidental Solopreneur, I thought I want to give myself a new challenge. This time I want to write something that's fiction, still a business book, but I see you've got the Advantage behind you there by Patrick
Yeah.
Lencioni. Love Patrick Lencioni books, especially like The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, where it's a story and you learn and he's got his formula in there. But I want to write a book like that. So I found myself a good fiction editor that specializes in business fiction books. I had my idea in mind and I worked with the editor to really craft out the story, build tension, build out these different characters and really tell the story in a riveting way. It's basically my story, maybe 80%, with some names and stuff changed to protect the innocent. But I could also embellish a little more, right? Because it's a fictional story. I can add in other characters. I can add in other tension. I can, exaggerate certain things, and people love it. I've had several people read it in like one sitting. It's a 220-page book,
Wow.
but they're like, "Wow, this is my story. This was me. I was this burnt out corporate executive, and I wanted to bet on myself. And wow, I love the formula you've set out here, and I can really relate to this character and what they're going through and how it's impacting their family and all the different components there. It was so fun to craft that story, and then to see people resonating with it is just so extremely rewarding.
Mm, that's awesome. I love that people are loving the book. Here's a question: Are Do you ever have any? Do you ever see any potential red flags when if someone's coming to you and saying, "Hey, like I'm burnt out. I want to do my own thing," or any caution that you would give to people if they're start? I think that might be two
Yeah,
different questions in one, but you
yeah,
can choose which one you want to go. Maybe cautions that you give to people, but also like red flags for someone wanting
yeah.
to run and start their own thing.
The first thing is, what's their motivation?
Hmm.
So, if it's, hey, I need money and I need money fast, can I just start up my own coaching or consulting business? That's a caution and a red flag.
Yeah.
One, if you need money tomorrow, building your own personal brand and starting your own business and building up clientele takes time. It's not a short term game, despite a bunch of the stuff you might see on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. You can't do this in a month. You're not going to build a $10,000 a month business in a couple of weeks. Um, you know, you're one of a million options out there. If you're a coach or consultant or freelancer, you're competing with millions of other coaches, consultants, and freelancers. So it takes time. You need to build relationships. There's got to be something different or unique about you or how you do it. You probably need to have some sort of proprietary process or methodology or system. Otherwise, people are just buying your time. And
Hmm.
nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, "Hey, I think I just want to buy a couple hours of Dennis Geelan's time today." Right?
Yeah.
What they want is some sort of results. What they want is some sort of transformation. So you have to be very clear on, what problem am I solving, and why is my unique solution the solution that they need for their problem. So that's a huge one. If it's like, hey, I want to do this fast because I need money now, that's a problem. And the other red flag would be, okay, is it just about money? Like, I do this because I absolutely just love problem solving. I love helping people. Um, on the consulting side, I love designing workshops and working with leadership teams, and just the energy in the room when you're working together on stuff and ideas are coming. I love that. That energy just fuels me. On the coaching side, I love being able to help somebody design their own one person business and then get some clients and then see some success. I feel like I've built a relationship. I feel like I've helped somebody, and that's really rewarding. The money is just a byproduct. I've helped solve a problem for you, and I make a living from doing that. But the money is not my motivator. It's helping you and building a relationship with you and seeing you be successful. That's my motivator. So
Yeah. I think that's a really good answer. The motive is a huge part about it. You're probably not going to make money really fast, and a lot of it really fast, if you just like quit and do something. And that's why I like your advice about doing something on the side for a little
yeah,
bit and learning some, because then it would make a transition much smoother than just going
yes,
from
a hundred
0 to
percent.
100.
Yeah, and that's again another reason why, boy, I wish I had started this much earlier on the side when I still had my corporate career, because I didn't know anything about branding, marketing, and sales. Like, my whole corporate career was on the operations side. I started off as a software developer and then worked my way up into a manager of a software development team. And then I worked my way into project management. And then I became a director of a project management office. None of that has anything to do with branding, marketing, and sales. It's all about planning and execution and delivery. So I developed all these skills about strategy and leadership and planning. And I, had all kinds of different resources that I could use to work with companies and people on that. But I had no idea how to brand myself, market myself, package and sell my services. So I had to learn all that from scratch. Whereas if I had started this as a side hustle, I would have been learning those things on the side and not have to be forced into learning them ASAP.
Hmm. When you learned all those things from scratch, was that just trying and failing, or did you take some sort of course, or what did that look like?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was a lot of trial and error. And there's so much information out there. It's almost information overload. Like I read all kinds of blogs and articles. I watched YouTube videos, as much stuff as I could do for free in the beginning, because I wanted to try and do it all myself. And I quickly came to the realization I can't do it all myself. There's way too much information out there. 90% of it doesn't apply to the type of business I'm building. I need some help. So that's where I did get some coaches, some mentors. I took some different courses that were helping me really build what I needed for my business. And that's when things really started to take off.
Okay, cool. Well, I really love your story. There's so much to learn from you, and I can't wait to do a little recap episode because I've just got a lot of thoughts to share and everything. But I really appreciate you joining me, and this podcast. It's funny because it was almost like a quote accident, if you will, with where I even came up with the name from, and it meant something different early on. But the wake up and lead, if you will, now really makes me just think about someone who might be asleep at the wheel of their own life or might be coasting a little bit. And so that's a lot of times what I mean when I say wake up and lead. And so I like my guests to tell everybody to wake up and lead when we
There
end
you
this. So
go.
if you don't mind, I'll say it's time for you and me, and then you say to wake up and lead. Sound good?
Got it.
All right, it's time for you and me.
Wake up and lead.
Thanks, Dennis.